Hello, hello, Facebook land. This is Erika Brown Johnson. I'm here with Loving Our Children tonight. I'm here with Cynthia Camble, our Chief of Staff, and Cashmeira Henderson, our Executive Administrator of Public Relations. Tonight, we are talking about too much love, too much discipline when it comes down to your children. I'm going to pass this over to Cynthia Campbell. Facebook land, come on in, join us, and Cynthia will take over.
Hi, I was wondering about what topic we were going to do this week, and I just got a lot of emails from parents saying that their kids are just being out of control, or even some of them are in a state of depression. So we just want to go ahead and deal with a couple things of how to handle that. But what I was seeing too, when I asked a few questions, because a lot of times people will have general statements, my child is acting up or my child is sad, and they never go down and dig deeper. So we want to dig a little bit deeper. And about 3 or 4 of the parents that I talked to this week, they were talking about how their children were being non-responsive. And then that what their way of handling it is just leaving the child alone. And sometimes that could be both dangerous, for the child and the family, because you never know what's going on in a child's mind or how they may feel be feeling disconnected, especially now in the area we live with the COVID. A lot of kids are not able to go out and play with their friends and different things like that. And a lot of them are depressed. Like I know my grandson's depressed, that he's not depressed, but he's like, I'm bummed out because I can't go to school. It's got my first year in junior high, and I'm not gonna be there. And I've talked to a lot of parents of teens that didn't get to have their homecoming, graduation like they thought they were. And how do we redirect them? And how do we help them to cope? And how are you as a parent caregiver of a child coping? Because the children will learn those behaviors by watching you, not just by what you say. So I would go ahead and open it up and ask either one of the ladies if they have anything they would want to share before we start doing some deep dive.
I think sometimes, I would think sometimes that parents sometimes leave kids alone because they don't have the exact words or the exact actions to actually give the child. So sometimes they feel like, well, if I'll just leave them alone, they'll figure it out on their own. And don't get me wrong, I feel like there are some things that kids have to figure out on their own, but God wouldn't have given them parents if they had to figure everything out on their own. So I think sometimes the parents need help in that area and they need direction in what to do, especially during this time. I've spoken with so many adults that don't know what to do. So our assumption is the kids probably don't either. Yeah.
Awesome. Cashmere, you want to expound?
I would say for us, it was really difficult, the social interaction with my daughter being 7 and not being able to see her friends and having the normal school routine. And at first, we really didn't know what to do, because you can't really, at the time, we didn't want to take them out into the public because we weren't sure what the guidelines yet and everything. This is like right at the beginning, like maybe around April. But then slowly we started taking her to the park so she could be around other people. And that even helped a little bit in her being able to be free and dance and play and sing and be loud. But it is stressful. I noticed her being in the home all the time with her being the only one of her age. I could see how it was weighing on her. Right now we're on vacation with family and we know she's been playing with her cousin and we know who her cousin's around. Her cousin isn't going out into the public to play with other friends, so they're together a lot, and it's been a safe atmosphere for them. And we've seen her growth in just like the few weeks that we've been here, and her excitement about life again. When I think back, prior to this, she had started spending a lot of time in her room, like by herself, which wasn't normal for her. And then when we would go out, we would have to try to drag her out of the house. She didn't want to leave the house. And so to see the change in her personality and the way she carries herself now, being around her cousin, has been helpful. So I know kids are struggling out there, and I know it's hard for them with anxiety and sadness and stuff, not being able to be around the other people and have the same daily routine. For us, this has been really good, but don't even know what to tell parents right now on what other ways to overcome this. Oh,
That is really
you're muted.
that is a good thank you for being authentic in that, because a lot of times we as parents and caregivers, we will, just act like nothing's nothing's going on, or we're not having difficulties or struggles ourselves, or having to have resolution. And when we do that, then we hinder our children, because we're not looking at reality, or even saying, oh, I'm fine, when you're not, because even a child can feel those anxieties and stuff inside of them. So one thing that I was reading about was focused attention, 5 areas of attention. So sometimes when our children are hurting and they're going through, we have to focus their attention on other things. You might have to give them visuals, and even if you just go outside and say, let's count the many of cars that come by are red, start doing those different things to just break it up some. And then, or just depending on what age your kid is, you might be able to go out and have, if you're not taking them to restaurants, or just have a sandwich or moments alone with each one, and let them just talk about what they want to talk about. No judgment, no nothing. Just let them pour out their feelings. And one thing I was seeing with a lot of parents, they were interjecting when the kids were trying to tell them how they felt. And it was like, well, you shouldn't feel that way, or you should suck it up, or you should do this. And you need to let the child own their feelings, and then you can help them focus and work out the correct responses they should have, and help them to be able to navigate that, because this is a skill they're going to need. It's a life skill. Emotional intelligence is so needed in this world right now. Many people, not just the children, don't know how to express their emotions, or how to deal with them, or they even may turn to drugs or something else, that because they're hurting so bad and they have no outlet.
I have just a quick statement, and in regards to what you were saying, back to our title, too much love or too much discipline. I heard someone say just the last night that they were letting their parents know something that was going on in their lives, right? And the first thing the parent did was to look around to see if anyone else heard what she said. So a lot of times, discipline comes like that as well. So the parent was more concerned that someone else could have known what she stated, and she was more embarrassed about the things that someone else would know about her child. Same thing, and it comes down to discipline. Sometimes parents, they don't ask their children why they did something. They just come back and tell them, revert it back to themselves and say, I taught you better than that. Instead of asking, well, why did you do that? Because sometimes they look at discipline as it makes some kind of vision on them as a parent to why you did what you did. And that's not necessarily the truth. And I can remember telling a guy this years ago about his son, and he was so embarrassed about something that the son had did. And I said, that has no bearing on you as a parent. You taught him well. He made his own choice. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes when discipline is spewed out, however a parent does it, they revert it back to them as a parent versus why the child did what they did. Because I've learned that in the minority and Black community, we look at our children as trophies. So this is my trophy, and there's no way my trophy could act out this way.
That's a good view on that. I would say a lot of times we don't, we over discipline because one of the falsehoods I really do believe in the Black and people of color, we have to be harder on our children because we're getting them ready for the world. But are we really getting them ready for the world by being hard on them? There's a difference in being disciplined and in teaching them and building character and making sure that when the things that they do are wrong are addressed and the right punishment. But then there's also that overly making them insecure and feeling bad about everything they do, every step they make, or they're always feeling like I'm going to be punished for any little bitty thing. And that puts a little self-hate and self-rejection in them. So when they go out in the world, they already have this chip on their shoulder. They have a false identity, a false sense of who they are, because they really don't know who they are, because they've had so much negative spoken to them. So when you over discipline, then you see a lot of our children, they act out in so many different ways. And or they may act out with siblings or other relatives or other people nearby them, or when they're in school, they act out because they feel like they have no voice and that they're not heard. And so a lot of times we have to I would have to go to God and say, God, how do I discipline this child? Or am I doing too much? And then you have to look at the different types of learning styles for children. Not every child is going to respond the same way. I have one kid, all I do is look at them. They're like, oh, I'm good. Another one wants to question, why am I in trouble? And I think it's unjust. And then the other one's like, I'm gonna be in trouble anyway, so I might as well do what I want. So I had to learn the discipline in different ways. But when you give the child love in the sense of being, in the sense of belonging, and have their own, have the mutual respect as a human being, but also let them know that they are, under your authority until you leave, then you can raise healthier kids that won't go out and act out so much. Because I'm going to tell you, every kid, I don't care how precious you think that child is, they're going to do something. They're going to do something. And if you are delusional enough to believe that it won't happen, just wait. And I'm not speaking anything bad on you. We did it. We all did it. We could have the best parents in the world, but we all have done stuff because it's a learning process. But if we discipline the child every time they do something that is not pleasing in our sight, and it might not be a family rule or a value or anything else, or something that we don't dislike, then we need to go back and self-examine it, because that child is going to start saying, I can't have my own personality. I'll say one thing, and then I'll let you go ahead and speak. When you have different learning styles, so you can have 2 or 3 different kids, right? And you can have one that listens by the ear, okay? Another one's gonna listen by the sight and actions that you do. And another needs some rules written down. And then some of you just gonna have free will. They just, those you're gonna have to find creative ways to deal with. So in that, you have to make sure that when you're doing that, and some disciplines may be harsher to other kids, a child that's very sensitive, when we go and start teaching the class in October about the different learning styles and the giftings in children, we'll be diving into that, because I can say to, I'll use you too, because you're on here. Erika, I didn't like the way you just folded those clothes. Erika be like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna fold them the right way, what you want, okay, right? And then I can say, Cashmeira, I didn't like the way you folded those clothes. I can't believe she said that. I don't think I failed. I did that, And it's like those two dynamics, when you said the same thing to the same 2 different children, and they heard it 2 different ways, right? Absolutely. So that's why we need to know our children and know what they need and know their love language. Okay, go ahead.
That was good. Question: do you think sometimes there is a division of love with gender? Because you'll find where sometimes mothers are a little bit more tender with their boys and a little bit more tougher sometimes with their girls. And then you'll find the opposite with dads. They kind of just let girls get away with almost anything. And then they're like iron fists with the boys. Tell me, and I'm a Southern girl, so this is the South talking. And I understand the rule of what they're trying to accomplish with that. But I still feel there's a better way to do that. So I'll let you expound on that.
Well, I'll use a biblical example because I can't think of one in the natural at this moment. But you know, we look at Abraham and Sarah. We look through Isaac and Rebecca. All these different lineage. David, you know, because he was, you know, not didn't have the same mom. All throughout, you see in out through the Bible where people made family differences. You know, and then a lot of them. I can't think of the guy's name right now, but God called him to lead, but his brothers didn't like him. And then when he went out to be successful, he came back and ran the family. So sometimes when we have family members that have those gender biases, then you can inflict something on a child. You can put a soul wound that takes them a lifetime to get over. And so that's what we have to realize. Each child is valuable, and each one has its place in gifting and talent in the family, but we cannot have favoritism. When people are like, oh, we don't have favoritism, there's a lot of favoritism in family because there might be one that's leaning more towards your personality or what you want. But when you, as you were talking about the gender side, I know a lot of, you know, and it's not just the Southern, it's all over. And in some families, it's like the girl is just going to be set up to get married and go away. You know, so then the boy is the one's going to do all these great things and everything else. And so many girls, when they get out there, the first thing they look to is for someone to validate them. And usually it's the wrong person to validate them, you know? And then that cycle continues and continues as they're looking for love because they couldn't get that from their mother, or they feel like they're in competition with their mom. So all these different dynamics come into place. And I think one way to do that is just to make sure, look, everybody has chores, everybody has responsibilities. Okay, you'll all be treated differently. There might be some men activities that men do with their sons that will help them be a man. But that's what you have to learn to teach them and say, look, your son, your child, both of your children will learn how to treat their future spouse by the way you are treating them and how you're treating their mother. So these are all things that you have been accountable, and God has given you charge to make sure that you train up the child in the way they should go. So if you have chauvinistic tendencies, or if you have that sweet mama, I love you so much and get away with everything, you can have resentment from your daughter, and your son will be no good for no woman. So you want to make sure that if you raise a son with too much love and he's no good with no woman, he gonna leave some babies for you maybe have to take care of. So think about these things. Think about the generational ripple effect of that.
Wow, that's good.
Cashmeira, you have something you want to say?
Not anything too important, but when you were talking, I was just thinking, recently my 2-year-old has been coming up to me and just give me a kiss, mama, give me a kiss on my cheek, and like give me hugs. And I'm like, he's learning that from his daddy. And I was so proud. But that's the only comment I have. They watch everything that you're doing with their parents, and they're gonna mimic that. And that's so true. No matter how, like, and I used to tell my husband that all the time. However you treat me, Aria's gonna pick a husband that treats her the way that you treat me. So you better treat me good. That's true.
All right, I have another question for you, Miss Camble. Is it a such thing? Is it a such thing that men can teach their daughters to be too masculine, and women can teach their daughters to be too feminine? I'm sorry, their sons. Teach their sons to be too feminine. And I'm going to give you an example. My father taught me a lot of things that I was able to learn in my adult life. Sometimes people ask me certain things about, vehicles, or, living in houses and making sure piping is done such and such a way, and making sure windows are caulked, and the things that most women don't really pay attention to. But because I had a dad that was always concerned that we preserved what we had, he wanted to teach me those things as a girl. I also had a cousin whose mother was a beautician, and his mother taught him how to do hair. And he's very masculine, but he was at a certain point, he had his daughters. So he was able to do their hair, because his mother taught him how to do hair. And I think sometimes, and those are, I feel like there are good traits, but I feel like sometimes the world looks at it so negatively. You know, I mean, I don't really like yard work, but I know how to do it because my dad taught me how to do it. You know, so that's, you know, I think sometimes it's frowned upon when women do quote unquote masculine things or masculine looking things, or even having the knowledge of it, not necessarily doing it, but can actually hold her own in a conversation because her father taught her these things. Same thing with the man. Go ahead.
Okay, so what I would say about that is that those are life skills that the parents has taught, and things that they can impart in gifts and talents they can impart into their child. That shouldn't have anything to do with their masculinity or their femininity. And so I know with my granddaughters, them girls climb trees, do all kind of stuff, but then they like to have the girly dresses and everything else because their parents are teaching them to be well-rounded. And so what is missing out a lot of people's lives is that they may have had a passion for something. I can use one example of one child that wanted to be a cook. And his father's like, that's for sissies, or those are for girls, sissies, or gay men, or whatever that he wanted to put on his son. And that was the passion of his son. And so his son tried to do all these other things, but he was never happy. You know, so we have to look at what the gifts and talents in our children, but we are to empower them to be well-rounded all the way around. Men need to know how to cook. They need to know.
Women need to know how to change tires.
Yes, I know how to do all of that, and I am thankful for. I know one thing my father taught me. I think maybe 14, 15 years old. He was like, Cynthia, we were in Boston. And he's like, I'm going to teach you how to be a lady and what you need in your car and everything else. But I'm also going to teach you how to be a little bit hood because I need you to be able to protect yourself. So I appreciated that my daddy was like, he pushed me at the same time, but also told me be who you are. And so parents need to do that. And the world stigma, you know, on masculinity and feminism and whatever you want to call it is so far left that we have to go back and be rooted and grounded in what God says we're supposed to be.
I agree. I think once we get past what we feel like the world says is there and get back to the basics, then none of that other stuff would matter. You know, and people won't frown upon a woman knowing masculine things or being masculine and you know, having the knowledge of that kind of stuff. And the same thing goes with men. I think all men who have daughters should know how to do hair. Yes. Period. Regardless. And that's not making him feminine or, you know, emasculating him whatsoever. That is something that he should know how to do. Yeah.
I agree. And I think a lot of I'll give you an example. I was in one of the stores, and this young lady, the cashier, she was like, I was asking, she goes, I'm so tired, but I'm here. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? I'm going to school to be an HVAC tech. I said, oh, that's good for you. She said, I just gave birth to a baby, but I'm still doing it. She goes, but the funny thing is that the guys in the class are coming to me, learning some stuff from me. And she just seems so happy about that because she says, I'm accepted because I know the knowledge, I know how to fix it. So that was a great example for me today to just, you know, see the young lady and say, okay, I'm going to be cheering you on. I'm going to cheer you on and give you my card and call me if you need me. Because those things, that's what we need to uplift, both on the male and female side. We also have a young man, he can do some hair, man. He can do some hair, sweetheart, but he is still a man. He's creative and he loves to make people beautiful and creating arts. And so when we can get past, okay, this is a man's job, this is a woman's job, and saying whomever the best person for that job is, then we will be able to mentor our children and bring our children in the ways when the girls say, oh, I want to play soccer, or I'm trying to think of some other sport, football, or yeah, I want to do those things because you know, you don't want to say that's a boy's thing or that's a girl's thing. So let's see how you can do that. Let's see if there's a way you can do that, you know? And I think that would take away a lot of the gender stuff that we have going on now in the world. because children are not allowed to express what they really desire to do inside. And so they say, okay, I'm just going to convert. I had a couple teenagers there, and it's not to bash anyone on their lifestyle choices. That's not what I'm doing. But sometimes when we are pushed down and made to feel that we are not to be able to have identity, we go to different extremes, and we go to different things or people that that will accept us. And sometimes even if we know in our soul and our spirit that is the wrong thing, we feel loved and accepted. And that's another form of too much discipline. When a parent is continually telling you everything you're doing wrong, continually you get a spanking for every little thing, all those things, that's too much discipline. And when you discipline and then you don't go and correct and love and affirm, then you're failing your child.
Yeah, that's true. I think I learned, I taught my new converts class for a short period of time at my old church. And one of the things that I would get from, seemed like every one of my older students is, Miss Erika, did I do that right? And I was like, well, what did God tell you? Did God tell you that you did that right? But because when we grew up in this, a lot of times in this society that parents teach wrong versus right, the kids never know what they do right. So they grow up as adults thinking that everything that they do is wrong if someone didn't say you did a good job. Mm-hmm. So the expectation is that it has to be wrong if I didn't get some form of kudos. And that comes from, I'm talking about everyone who was like over 50. Every single person would say the same thing. And I was like, why is this? It was aggravating my spirit. Like, I'm not God, so I can't tell you that you did something wrong if you're feeling that this is what God has told you to do. That's between you and God. He is the convictor, not me. He sends the convicting spirit. I'm sorry, not me. So, but that's something that's embedded in a lot of adults because parents don't tell their children when they do things right. So they don't have a happy balance. There's not a happy balance of discipline because it's always wrong. And I'm never told when it's right. Yeah.
And another component, and I was talking to someone about 2 weeks about this topic, about self-punishing. Self-punishing yourself. So when you grow up with a heavy-handed discipline and a very controlling environment, you will self-punish yourself before the parent or someone else can punish you, and so you won't get the whole full wrath. But then you take that into childhood, in adulthood, and then you'll find these tendencies. You'll find these tendencies of you self-punishing yourself. And then, but you have to go and deal with that root. And I just decree and declare right now that God's going to reveal everyone that's being a self-punisher will be free tonight in Jesus' name. Yes. Because I can tell you from that testimony, that was mine. I'm just going to punish myself. And so then, or I'm going to, if I didn't do something the way that I thought it should be done, self-punish. So that's things that you can start putting in. And that might not just be from a parent. It might be from a trauma. It might be from an outside source, teachers or anything else, or something that happened to you traumatically. So I'm not saying that parents, you just, messing up your kids all the way around. You're doing the best that you can. But when you cannot, when you don't have the answers, first and foremost, go to God. And if he directs you to counseling or anyone else or to someone else in your circle, then that's what you do. Don't have that pride. But we're telling you things like this tonight to let you know that it is your job to steward that child. It is your job not just to train them up in the way they should go, but to make sure that they're happy, productive people in the society, giving back. We're making destiny builders. That's what we're doing.
Let me give a few examples of what Cynthia was talking about when it comes down to self-punishing. And a lot of people don't even realize that they're doing it, but they do it. For an example, you said, okay, you know what? I tell you what. And it's a difference between disciplining yourself and punishing yourself. Sometimes we do have to discipline ourselves and police ourselves in certain areas. We can't say whatever comes to our mind. You know, we can't eat whatever we decide we want to eat all the time. Sometimes we have to discipline ourselves in those areas. But people will punish themselves and say, you know what? I don't really deserve a guy like that. I'm just going to let him go. And it's because you feel that you're not worthy of a situation like that. Same thing with guys do with women. I don't really deserve a woman like that. I just don't. Because you see all of your imperfections. So you say to yourself, I'm going to punish myself to distance myself from something that's good because I don't see my worth in me of having it. I've heard people say, you know what? Those kind of cars are for certain kind of people. As if you don't deserve that yourself. It's okay for someone else to have it, but you'll punish yourself from getting that because you don't see your worth in having that. I don't deserve this kind of job. You know, that's for certain kind of people.
Yeah.
And
so how would you help a child get over that before they got to the adult age, asking all those, having all those statements?
I think first of all, the adult who's telling the child that has to be healed as well. Because I've heard adults tell children the most heinous things that can break a child's spirit. You know, so you have to be healed first in order to be able to teach a child that. And I think we have to teach our children about God first, so they can understand that God is the giver, number one, and no one else is. He uses people, but God is the ultimate, our ultimate source. So once we give them an understanding about God and how God preserves and how God gives and how he loves and how he does all of those things, I think it'll come a little easier for the parent and the child to understand the giving of God, because he is our source.
So on that note, Cashmeira, because I know we're dominating the conversation here, but because you're still a young parent, how is some of the things that we've talked about going to be implemented in your life, or how are they already implemented in your life? Because I know that you guys are raising godly children, and you guys are a family that love God. So give us your view.
Well, I have to say God does about like 90% of my parenting. I'm working on a lot of it, and I think sometimes I can over discipline my daughter especially. And I'm not sure, I think I probably did talk about this before, because I see so much promise in her and so much strength and so much wisdom in her. So I always try to foster that. And sometimes I think I hold her higher than like a 7-year-old. So after hearing this conversation and thinking about my own childhood, my parents, they weren't too disciplined and they gave a lot of love, but because of outside circumstances, I did the world. And I don't want my daughter to go through any of those things that I went through when I was, that young. So I'm definitely going to step back a little bit, pray about this a lot. Already took a bunch of notes. My computer just died. Otherwise, I'd read them to you guys. But I took a lot of notes, and I'm going to really try to implement. We do affirm her. We try to do it like every day, but do more affirmation, more love, and be a little more lenient with her because she still is only 7. So yeah, I'm just soaking up everything you guys are saying right
now. Awesome. Go ahead.
Okay. I have another question. So what is too much love?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So here we go. Too much love is not letting a child grow from their mistakes. Too much love is never letting them own up to anything that they do wrong, and you let them have everything they want the way they want it. As a child, you might be like, "Oh," but I've actually heard some children saying, "My parents just give me stuff because they don't want to have to deal with me." So the parents thinking, "Oh, I'm giving them all this stuff. I'm taking them all these events. I'm doing all this stuff," but the child just wants to have some time with their parent. So sometimes we look at the things that we give and not giving the discipline to be equated as love. And that's not always the case. It's, children, they want your time more than anything else.
They also want your discipline.
Yes.
They really do, because it I've heard people say, well, it was great that you had discipline, because I didn't grow up, my parents didn't care. So whatever I did, it didn't matter. And now it leads me to a whole nother path as an adult versus, actually getting discipline. It was fine as a kid, but when they got to an adult, they realized that they needed that discipline.
Oh yeah. And this generation of kids, they want some discipline. They want life skills. They want all the stuff. And I think this younger generation, they just gonna blow our minds of all the things that they accomplished, because they're a whole nother breed. They're coming out different. I was like, whoa, goodness, this is not. Kids are doing stuff way before we did it, and they have deeper conversations and thoughts. And I'm like, I want to think about that stuff when I was 19 years old. So it's more of what was lacking. They're carrying it to themselves. And so sometimes when parents are overly loving their children, overly giving, is because they lack those areas and they haven't, again, like you were saying, haven't been healed. And so when you become a parent, if it's planned or unplanned, you have an obligation to get yourself healed.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That you have a duty to your child.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
I agree. I think it hurts me when I see a parent who's not healed, because that is just going to be the trickle down effect to the children and the grandchildren and everybody else who does not see their worth in getting healed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say, that was one of my biggest concerns before even thinking about becoming a mother. I'm like, I need to get myself right before I have children. And I wanted to go to counseling and do all this stuff just to make sure that I wasn't going to push anything down to my child. And I'm so great for the college I went to, University of Maine at Farmington, because I took psychology courses, and through going to school, all the exercise we were doing, I was able to work through a lot of the things, so I didn't bring it in, in the future years to come with my child. It's so important. There are things that I didn't even know that were inside of me that I need to get out,
And that's a great point, because I would think we, as a culture, and people shy away. We're starting to talk more about mental health and mental health issues and different things like that. But before, in my generation, everything was kept and hid inside, and you just dealt with it. And then even when even though you may have loved your children, you still put on your insecurities, your fears and things on them. So that's awesome that you were able to have that avenue to go on. So what about those parents that can't go to school, cannot have those tools, can't afford a psychologist? What would you guys, both of you, answer? What would you guys suggest for them?
There's so many things in the community. Each community offers something when it comes down to mental health. Most jobs offer EAP. So if you have an employer and you have health insurance, you have EAP, which gives you, I think, 5 visits for free, something like that. So that's available. The key is, in the Black and minority community, that kind of thing is so frowned upon. So we have to get out of the mindset of using psychologists or going to counseling or any type of therapy. We have to get out of that mindset, because it's needed. It's imperative for this generation to have healthy mindsets. So we eat healthy, we exercise to keep our bodies healthy. What do you do for your mental health? So you have to have something that you're doing for your mental health. Everyone doesn't go to church, and everyone does not use spirituality as we do, but you have to have something. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say seek that within your community.
There's so many books out there. And even though for those who do attend church, I know that a lot of churches will give free counseling. When my husband and I got married, our pastors, thank God for them, they give us free marriage counseling. And that was really helpful for us in raising our daughter together. There's, like Miss Erika was saying, there's so many free resources out there that you can just reach out for, and there's online, you can find hotline numbers and everything. Especially right now during quarantine, I've been seeing so many advertisements, if you need somebody to talk to, call this number. So the resources are out there. You just have to be willing to be open to it.
Yes.
So I have a question to ask Cashmeira. So as a mother, right? What is one of the things that you see in your child that you have to that was in you that you have to learn how to have mercy and grace over?
There's so much. My daughter is a little me. Definitely wanting to be heard all the time, even when it's not, the appropriate time to be loud or talk. That's definitely one thing. And my husband and I struggle with that because we're like, how do we communicate to her that there's certain times that you speak up about things, and there's certain times that you need to be a listener. So that's really difficult. And we're still maneuvering through that right now. And I really don't even know how to move forward with that yet. So if you have any advice, that would be that would be helpful.
Yeah. You have kids.
My mouth got me in trouble when I was a kid. I had, that's basically what I'm trying to say.
I will say that grandparents are kind of culprits too. Now I'll just leave that there. But I would say in that whole respect is that you see some of the greatest talkers, but greatest influence of this world that they wouldn't shut up in class, they wouldn't be quiet and stuff like that. So you have to say, okay, this is a leader. How about we start recording you, creative ideas. Let's do a TV show, on you, and you record her so she can get all that stuff and that bubbliness and stuff out of her and the creativity. And instead of saying, okay, we're not going to use on a negative connotation, you do have to learn this. But when it's time, these we're going to have this time to set aside for you, and you can say whatever you want. We're going to give you the mic and let you do all of these things, so we don't start killing the spirit, but we flourish it. But then at the same time, you're only going to be able to do this if you have finished your chores, your homework, and all these different things. So then she has something to look forward to, and I have an expression. So now I'm not going to feel like I'm being pushed down, but I have times of freedom.
That's good. That's good. I can honestly. Oh. Go ahead. No, I was gonna honestly say when it comes down to that, I was that kid, Cashmeira. I was that kid that if my progress report had anything on it, it was definitely talking at inappropriate times. So that was my mother was used to it. I normally had like 2 or 3 every semester, so she was used to it. But one of the biggest things is when I got a little older and she gave me a little bit of leeway to go out and hang out with my friends and enjoy my friends, I would come and talk to her and give her play-by-play. And she was like, you did all of that? You did this and you did this. And I wouldn't tell her everything bad, but I would tell her the surface of those things. And she said, this is why I trusted you while you were out. She says, because you would come back home and give me play-by-play. And she would leave it open, like, okay, well, Erika, you say you're gonna go here, make sure you're there. And I'm like, yes, ma'am, I'm here. And we didn't have cell phones back then. So it wasn't like she can call and say, where are you? This, those things like that. So it gave her the ability to trust me because she allowed me to sit and just let it loose. Whenever I went out and came back home the next day, well, how was your day out? What did you do? I did this, and this. And so I think sometimes if you do, it'll give you an opportunity to really trust her. And you all will build like this trust between you guys, So I think what Cynthia was saying was a really, really good idea.
Yeah, that's great because that's definitely my daughter, and she has a heart of conviction too. So it does work in my favor, all her talking most of the time.
Now I forgot the question I was going to ask you, Erika. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, okay. I mean, that was really, really good. So I was like, well, I was going to ask you something. Anyway, let me think of another question then. Oh, it had to do with, I remember us talking about how great you and your nieces and nephews and get along and everything else. Some parents have a hard time communicating, or say they can't control their kids when there's a whole bunch of them there. Or so give an example of how you as an aunt bring both enjoyment and discipline to?
Okay. I can say for most of my nieces and nephews are adults now. So even with, I could say, their children, um, I do like certain things with the kids. Like maybe a couple months ago or so, I love consignment shopping. So I found these little cute little SpongeBob chairs for my twin nieces' kids. I have two. I said of twin nieces. So I went and got these SpongeBob chairs, and they're little chairs. So, but they wanted me to sit in them with them, and I was like, oh God, I hope I don't break the chair. So it's like really small chairs. But they were so excited about the chairs, and I was clapping with them and, doing musical chairs and singing with them. Those are little small things that kids really need. When it comes down to discipline, I am just as firm with discipline with them, because I personally hate repeating myself when it comes down to children. And I know you have to do it all the time, but I feel like as parents, and I try to teach my nieces with kids, if you keep repeating yourself, the respect is lessened more and more and more. So you have to be firm about what you said. And you can't, the more you keep repeating yourself, the less they're gonna do it. That's with anyone, but especially kids. So if you're repeating yourself and the same action is going over and over and over again, they're not being heard and you're not being firm enough. So, and when it comes down to some of my older nieces and nephews, I'm firm with them too when it comes down to certain disciplines, especially when their parents have made a stance and they're at odds with their parents. And I have to let them know, no. Let me explain to you what your mother meant. And sometimes they can take it from me more so than they can take it from their own parents. And it's because I'm not sugarcoating it. And I'm not being extremely aggressive about it, but I'm just telling them the truth about it. And it's receptive. And I can remember telling one of my nephews, and I said, you're letting the enemy tell you that your parents don't love you because they're disciplining you. That's not true. And I say, as a matter of fact, God loves you so much, he sent you an aunt that'll come and explain to you what your parents meant for you to get an understanding. And as mad as he was with his parents at that time, he came, he said, thank you, Auntie. Thank you. So it does really take a village.
Mm-hmm.
To give sometimes these kids understanding of what parents meant. Sometimes parents are so angry and are so upset with the kids that it does not display as love when it comes off as discipline. But sometimes I love you too. Okay. I'm sorry. So, but sometimes it doesn't come off as that. It doesn't come off, discipline comes off. Sometimes the enemy gets in these kids' heads and they make it seem like it's hate. But it's not hate, it's just love and wanting the kids to have the best, be the best, and be their best. So I'm really firm with them, and they know I am the aunt that they could not pull nothing over whatsoever. I have a nephew that's almost 30 years old. He says, Auntie, I do not lie to you. I tell you the truth because I know you know when I'm lying. Yeah. So it's important that they have that.
And that's good. And I mean, I know that's one of our core values and mission with the AIM is to make sure that we have that village that's there to support. And a lot of times relatives meaning well or trying to be on the good side of the children will sometimes sabotage what the parent standards are. So we as parents and grandparents and caregivers, we all need to be in unison when it comes to the discipline and the love of the child and setting those boundaries. Wow, we're like, I don't know if we're gonna be able to talk the whole time, but we're almost headed up that way. One thing I want to mention, and I'm gonna let Cashmeira go into more, is next week I'm not gonna be on, but I'm gonna be watching, and I am so excited about those middle school kids, and I know they're gonna be on next week talking about that. And I also I love the fact of middle child, because I am a middle child, that whole mindset. And as we continue to go and as we're preparing to teach you guys about all the different talents and gifts and learning styles of your children, and then coming up in the next few months, Oh my goodness. And so we're getting ready to learn ourselves on a deeper level, because you always are continuing learning how to express and to help as a village helper, So what I love is that the middle kids sometimes get lost. So we did just start another one of the board members, because each one gets to pick something they want to advocate. One of the board members decided we're going to do in the middle. And in the middle means that those kids that are in the middle school, what am I trying to say? The middle child, the middle school, or middle income families that the parents don't have enough money to, how they'll pay for sports activities or piano lessons or whatever else for kids that can't afford it or on some kind of subsidy. And then people that have a lot of money, they can pay for that. But the kids in the middle, a lot of time get lost. So they have donated some money towards us being able to start a scholarship fund for that. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about all the different things we're doing. But I'm going to be like cheering y'all on when y'all talk next week, because I know, Erika, you've been a teacher in that area. Cashmeira, you getting ready to be in that area soon. So you're going to learn a whole lot of that. And then and the speaker, and her name is
Miss Kaylee McLean.
And I think she is awesome. And she is going to be ready, a youth minister alongside with her husband. And she's going to have some stories. And I'm just going to be sitting back with me some popcorn and just while I'm on my sabbatical, I'm going to be like, oh, so I'm looking forward to turning over the rings to you guys, the realms to you. And then a lot of things are coming up later in thing, and I think we'll talk about that next week when they're in the middle, so we can talk about Blended Magazine and all that kind of stuff. But I do want to end with what would be one of the greatest advice that you could give to a single parent on how to both love and discipline on a balanced scale.
Is that a question for us? Mm-hmm. Okay. Cashmeira, you want to go first?
Sure. Camble, you're laughing at me.
I'm like, woohoo!
I always go with pray first, go to God first, and don't be afraid to reach out to other people as a single parent, because like Miss Erika was saying earlier, it takes a village to raise a child. You can't do it alone, not even when you are with, when you're married with, a husband or a wife, you still need other people on the outside. Depend on your parents, their aunts and uncles, people in the church, people in the school. There's always people willing to help you. That would be my advice. Don't be scared. Don't feel ashamed that you need help, because we all need help.
I would leave them with a couple of scriptures. Number one, train a child up the way he should go, and he will never depart from it. Another one is spare the rod, spoil the child. I think that, and the last one will be loving kindness shall I draw thee. So I think those things there, there's a balance of that. You're not sparing the child and spoiling, spare the rod, spoil the child, like all the time. That's not something that you're doing all the time. But sometimes there may come a time of that. I'm more of a talker. I can't even remember me really ever spanking my nieces and nephews, other than, like a pop on the hand or something like that when they were younger. That's something that I didn't do because I'm a talker. And my voice is big and loud and scary to a small child. So I knew that my voice could get a lot more done than me actually having to spank them. But sometimes there's a place for that. And I think as a parent, choose very, very wisely when you're using that particular discipline for your kids, because that's not for everything. I know I grew up in an era that we got spanked for everything. My mother said she didn't spank me enough, but I said I got enough spankings for everybody. So, but I think that is a discipline that should be the last resort of it. A lot of times children are spanked just because the parent is tired. They're aggravated, they're frustrated, and then they take all of their frustrations out on those children. I think there should be a happy balance of that. I think training a child up is basically teaching them God's word. That's loving them. I don't think sometimes parents look at that as loving them. But if you can teach a child, I don't care if you just take them to church for them to learn something, they're learning discipline right then. They're learning God's word right then. You know, parents don't always have it to be able to teach their children God's word, but it's small scriptures that you can read to your children. You really can, and that's loving them. And then loving kindness shall I draw thee. You're never going to draw your child into them without giving them love. And that's with anyone. So you really have to focus on loving your child and asking God how to love that child. Because everyone does not spell love with give me. Some of them spell love with time.
So the scriptures I thought about when I was asking you guys that question was Colossians 3:21. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they'll become discouraged. So that is a proof test right there. Am I embittering my child? And then Ephesians 6:4, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Yes. Okay, so right there, we have to have mutual respect for your children. They are a precious gift given to you. So we have to always remember that, you know, we'll be held accountable of how we treat our children. And it is our joy and privilege to be able to raise the future leaders of this world. So when we look at it in that aspect, that we're going to stand before God and say, God, this is what I did as a parent. And I want this, my parenthood have brought you glory, and brought my child to a place that they can say they love you, and they don't have to go seeking love from other places, and know that you're my true source. And we're out of our time, and I am so excited. You guys did excellent. I had so many other things to say about provoking the anger, but we're not going to get to it because we want to be mindful of everyone's Friday. I hope you get to have rest and love, and that you just have a time with your families if you're there. And if you're by yourself, go get a bubble bath, go do something that's awesome. Men can have bubble baths too, you know. So, so just do something to celebrate you, your family, and us just being here on this earth right now, because life is so precious. We have lost so many people in this last week that every day, you know, you need to take it and love and honor and respect those that's in your life. We'll see you guys next week. They will.
Bye.
Bye.